Supercar Street Racing here with a Supercar Fact Update. When you think of supercars, you probably think of power, speed, and performance, right? What about gas mileage and fuel economy? Well, probably not. If you can afford any of these cars, you probably can afford the fuel. Well, what about the rest of us? Here are the top 20 cars with the worst average fuel economy. This takes into account both city and highway driving and makes an average. At number 20, we've got the Lexus Lc 500. It makes 471 horsepower, costs $92,000, gets 16 miles per gallon in the city, 26 on the highway, and averages at 19 miles per gallon. Next up, the Nissan Gtr with 565 horsepower, costs $100,000, gets 16 in the city, 22 on the highway, and averages at 18 miles per gallon. Then the Chevy Zo6. At an $80,000 price tag, it gets 15 in the city, 22 on the highway, and averages at 18 miles per gallon. Up next, the Jaguar F-Type R. 550 horsepower, costing $103,000. It gets 15 miles per gallon in the city, 23 on the highway, and averages at 18 miles per gallon. Followed up by the Cadillac Cts-V. It's a 640 horsepower V8. Costs $86,000, gets 14 in the city, 21 on the highway, and a 17 mile per gallon average. Right after that, we've got the Bmw M6 with its twin turbocharged V8, making 560 horsepower. It costs $120,000, gets 15 in the city, 22 on the highway, and averages in at 17 miles per gallon. Next up, the Audi R8 Spyder. It has a 5.2-liter V10, all-wheel drive, 540 horsepower machine. Costs $177,100, gets 14 in the city, 22 on the highway, and averages in at 17 miles per gallon. Right after that, the Aston Martin Vanquish S. With its 6-liter V12, it makes 603 horsepower, costing a whopping $300,000, gets 13 in the city, 21 on the highway, and a 16 mile per gallon overall average. And up after that, the old reliable. Sitting in the garage now, the Mercedes Amg Sl 65. It has 621 horsepower. It costs $222,000, gets 13 miles per gallon in the city, 22 miles per gallon on the highway, and a 16 mile per gallon overall average. Next up, the Gran Turismo Maserati Convertible. With its V8 rear-wheel drive 4.7-liter engine, it makes 454 horsepower, costs $150,000, gets 13 in the city, 20 on the highway, and an average of 15 miles per gallon. The Rolls-Royce Wraith is up next. With its twin turbocharged V12, it makes 624 horsepower, costs $320,000, gets 12 in the city, 19 on the highway, and a 14 mile per gallon average. Up next, the Bentley Continental Supersport. 700 horsepower, $300,000, and gets 12 miles per gallon in the city, 20 on the highway, which averages out to 14 miles per gallon. Then you've got the Ford GT with its all-new twin turbocharged V6. It makes 647 horsepower, costs $450,000, gets 11 in the city, 18 on the highway, averaging 14 miles per gallon. The Dodge Viper's up next, 645 horsepower from its 8.4-liter V10. It costs $90,495, gets 12 miles per gallon in the city, 19 on the highway, which averages to 14 miles per gallon. Now we've got the Pagani Huayra. Its 6-liter twin turbocharged V12, which it shares with the SL65 AMG in some ways, makes 700 horsepower. Its price tag, $1.4 million. It gets 11 miles per gallon in the city, 17 on the highway, averaging 13 miles per gallon. Up next, the Ferrari 812 Superfast. With its 6.5-liter V12 making 789 horsepower, it costs $335,000, gets 12 in the city, 16 on the highway, averaging 13 miles per gallon. Follow that by the Koenigsegg Agera RS. It has a twin turbocharged V8, making 1,160 horsepower. Costs $2 million, gets 11 in the city, 18 on the highway with a 13 average. Next up, the Jeep Grand Cherokee Trackhawk. Makes 707 horsepower, costs $85,900, gets 11 in the city, 17 on the highway, and averages at 13 miles per gallon. Followed up by the Lamborghini Aventador S. Makes 740 horsepower, costs $424,845, gets 10 miles per gallon in the city, 17 on the highway, and 12 miles per gallon, for a total average. And now, the worst gas mileage of any car, the Bugatti Chiron. It has an 8-liter quad-turbocharged W16 engine, all-wheel drive, makes 1,500 horsepower, costs a whopping $2.4 million, gets, can you guess? 9 miles per gallon on the city streets, 14 miles per gallon on the highway, and averages at a tiny 11 miles per gallon. This has been the worst gas mileage cars from Supercar Street Racing.